Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Theology on the Rise. I'm Nathan, one of your hosts. We also have Caleb on the other screen. He's just a guy. He's just here.
I'm not a co-host. In fact, I never was. This was started by Nathan and Seth, and I walked in to the first recording, and they said, "Come on," and I said, "Okay." And from then on,
Caleb sat
but I've
down.
never been officially welcomed as a co-host before.
He's just kind of been here.
Yeah. I've just been here.
That's why in the early episodes, he's just like sitting there, kind of like waiting for to say something, to jump into the conversation.
In silence.
In silence.
Yes. I was a fish among sharks. I was out of my depth.
I feel like
anyway. So Nathan, what are we doing here tonight? What are we?
Yeah. All of that was fake. Just so you know, Caleb was a part of this from the start. Just in case you're wondering.
They know this. They've been watching every single episode.
Yeah, I hope so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, tonight it's just the two of us. Usually we have someone that we're interviewing, but tonight, it just didn't work out to get someone. So
we're interviewing each other.
We're just going to interview each other. So take everything that you hear with a grain of salt. This is called Theology on the Rise, but Caleb and I don't have a master's. We don't have big theological credentials. We are just two guys who like theology and are interested in it. And we're both just trades guys. And that's okay. Trades guys can still talk about theology.
Great pitch, boss. That was great. Now we do have some Bible school, both of us.
Yeah, that is true.
And we've spent a lot of time in conversation with very learned people, so we're not.
Yeah, we're not totally inept. At a loss, but just as a disclaimer for everybody. But anyway, what we wanted to talk about tonight was I just recently had a birthday, turned 23. Awesome. Another year in the books, but
how does it feel to be old?
Yeah, nothing new. Worse than it did last year, I guess. I don't know. I feel like 23 just, I was telling someone this yesterday, actually, when I was like in youth group and stuff, and I had youth leaders who were 23 or like 22 or 23 or something like that. I always thought they were like the coolest people of all time. But now I'm like here and I'm realizing that they actually weren't that cool. And they're cooler now because they're older. But yeah, 23-year-olds are not as cool as you think they are, just so you know.
Bummer. I'm sure some youngsters look at you and think you're pretty cool.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Unfortunately, I'm not. So anyway,
so Nathan just had a birthday.
Yeah.
And that got him thinking about
that
holidays, special days, celebrations.
Yeah, I actually had a conversation with someone yesterday about man-made holidays, especially when it comes to like Christian man-made holidays or just Christian holidays that the church has like put in place for the purpose of, celebrating something more fully. So like, for example, right now we're in the season of Lent. And if you don't know what Lent is just a time that it's about 40 days before Easter. And it's a time that we're often encouraged as Christians to give something up for the purpose of focusing more on Christ, filling that time with something Christ-like, or at least that's the popular way of doing Lent. I know that there's lots of different Christian practices that do it, and I'm actually not totally sure what the original practice of Lent was meant to be, but that is what we observe now. in a lot of cases for Lent. But around Lent and around Easter, there's all sorts of different like man-made holidays. So you start Lent off with Ash Wednesday, and the imposition of ashes, where the pastor makes a sign of the cross on your forehead, in ashes. Sometimes those ashes are of the palm branches of the last Palm Sunday, depending on what tradition you're from. But then now we're approaching Easter, and there's a whole bunch of different days leading up to Easter on Holy Week, that are often observed. You have one that comes to mind is Monday Thursday, which I've always thought is like kind of a funny name for it, because when I first heard
Monday,
it,
Thursday.
yeah, literally, first time that I heard of it, I was like, Monday Thursday, Good Friday, Holy Saturday, and Resurrection Sunday, I guess it would be. I should probably look up those things, make sure I'm getting that all right. But yeah, there's just all these different. That's just one example of all of these different holidays that we observe, or like special days that we observe as Christians. And it just had me thinking, like in the conversation I was having, like, is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Like I've heard a lot of kind of controversy around things like, should we celebrate Christmas? Should we celebrate Easter if it's man-made? Less Christian, but like, should we celebrate Halloween as Christians? Should we celebrate Valentine's Day as Christians? Should we celebrate birthdays as Christians, right? And if so, why would we? Why wouldn't we? Right. So I thought we could just spend a few minutes kind of talking about that. For those who are listening, just get you thinking about it. Yeah, be intentional about it, I guess, and maybe intentional about how you spend your Holy Week in the next few weeks. But yeah, Caleb, what are your first thoughts on something like that? Like what first pops into your mind?
Yeah, well, I've yeah, it's a common commentary about the controversy surrounding holidays in general within the Christian. I mean, going back again to things we've talked about before, I've belonged to evangelical traditions, and I belong to a more liturgical tradition, being Lutheranism. So I've been on both sides. I've been all around in terms of the Christian traditional spectrum. We'll use that word. And I find that the controversy carries across, whether you're in a Baptist tradition or in a Lutheran tradition. I'm not an expert on the subject, but from my understanding, a lot of the controversy stems from, are these holidays in fact rooted in pagan festivals, pagan observances? And it seems that you can talk to one person and they will tell you that yes, Christmas is absolutely rooted in paganism, and you'll talk to someone else, more also a Christian in both scenarios, and they will tell you that no, it is 100% not rooted in paganism. So again, I'm not an expert on the subject, but from where I sit, I think that the question that is sort of the root of the controversy. I think it's hard. It's hard for me to blanket statement say that it is wrong to observe Christmas, or even it is wrong to observe something like Valentine's Day or these other festivals that we do, Lent. It's because for me, these things are rooted in church history. Like the church has done Lent for hundreds of years, and so it's something that our church church fathers, our ancestors, if you will, saw fit to practice, saw fit to do, and especially within the Lutheran Church, we are so rooted in our history, and we are so, so much of what we do in terms of observances and festivals goes back centuries, kind of thing. So it's a part of our church heritage. It's part of our culture in a way, right? So um, it's hard for me to sort of make that blanket or to agree with someone who makes that blanket statement about holidays, man-made holidays should not be celebrated, should not be um, observed because they're man-made. Not even the pagan, angle, but just the fact that they're man-made for some people is a sticking point. And I always thought that was interesting because
It's like,
I mean, yes, but it's like
I don't know. I
there's
guess
quite
we're
a
not celebrating. I guess we're not observing weekends anymore.
yeah,
Man-made or
yeah,
unman-made.
right. Like
I don't.
where does the buck stop becomes a question. Um, yeah, no, it's a good question. This is kind of a tangent, but my youngest brother is just starting to get into a lot of this discourse, and he's researching his tradition, which is different from my tradition. Um, and he's kind of arrived at the place where this is his perspective that because these things are man-made, they are not they ought not be celebrated, or at least there shouldn't be um sort of a incentive on the part of the church leadership to promote it, to push it, kind of thing. um and yeah, so it's a relevant question for sure, especially as we're in the season of Lent. um those are my initial thoughts. What do you think, Nathan?
I like. I think my stance, I guess, would be that, um, especially for things like Christmas and Easter, those are, yes, they are like, especially Christmas is like a man-made, um, kind of church sanctioned uh, holiday. But the reason that it is a holiday is because the church would like us to like celebrate the birth of Jesus, And it's like, is that such a bad thing? I understand the point of, um, you know, we need to be celebrating the birth of Jesus every day, or we need to
Mhm.
be, um, like for Lent, like we shouldn't just be giving up things for the season of Lent. Maybe it should be for more than Lent, right?
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I totally get that, but I don't think that disqualifies something like Christmas from being celebrated. I think a lot of it comes down to like, you know, people really are, they don't want to dishonor God in how they act or in what they do. I think that's a noble thing, right? To not want to dishonor God in those ways. And, one of the ways that we can dishonor God is worshiping idols or participating in idolatry.
Mhm.
And I think that, if your Christmas or Easter celebration is all about the gifts and the meal and, um, I don't know, the decorations or something like that,
Yeah.
then yeah,
Yeah.
that is a way that you can step into idolatry, because the reason that we're doing all those things is because we want to celebrate Christ, not just because we want to do those things, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
All those things for me in my past, my childhood, and up until now have created amazing, great memories around those seasons that I cherish, and that I think are good. Um, but a big part of those memories is my dad reading the Christmas story
Sure.
at
Sure.
Christmas time.
Yeah.
Or there was one year that we did like a hymn sing, and yeah, it wasn't the flashiest part of Christmas, but it was uh, significant to me because it was my parents showing me that the reason that we're doing all these things is because we're celebrating the birth of Jesus, and all these things come with that, right? So, but I understand that sentiment of like, I just don't want to fall into idolatry, so that's why I won't celebrate Christmas, or I won't
Sure.
celebrate Easter. But
Sure.
you have to understand that the
Sure.
reason we're celebrating those things is for Christ, and if you keep that the center of your celebration, uh, go for it. I don't know.
Sure. Well, and that's an interesting point that you bring up. I don't want to fall into idolatry. Good luck. Like
Sure.
you
Yeah.
are now making an idol out of your
Right.
conviction that you're not going to participate in the
Yeah.
idolatry of Christmas. So it's
Yeah. You're
and
making
I
an idol
understand
out of
like
not making idols. Yeah.
yes, exactly. So don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Sure.
Yes, the
Yeah.
commercialization of Christmas, I think we can all agree, Christian or not, the hyper commercialization of this season is gross. I don't think that anyone would argue with that. But do we throw the baby out with the bathwater? Because yes, while you might have your huge tree and whatever, pagan imagery that relates to, and while you might have um, you're doing the lights and you're doing all these things that are flashy and commercialized and societally, like pushed. Amidst all that, you have your little nativity scene. And in your example, your family sits around and reads the Christmas story. Is that nullified by all
The
of the
rest of it.
noise and the glimmer and the glam? No, it's not. It's not. It's, if you have there, because there, you're still getting to the heart of it, even if it's in, a small way, and we're distracted and we're focused on Christmas dinner and gifts and all these things. Like it's still there, and I think as long as we're intentional about doing like your family had done and said, let's sit down and read the Christmas story, or let's do a hymn or something. As long as or let's go to a Christmas service. Like if we're intentional with that, intentional about remembering what this is all about, what this was about initially, then I don't think again, we don't need to throw the baby out with the bathwater is where I would sit on
Yeah.
that.
And we don't need to be afraid of celebrating, right? Like, I don't know. One of the I had a spiritual disciplines class at CLBI. I think I have the book actually. And the teacher gave me this spiritual disciplines handbook, and it's just like a bunch of different practices, spiritual disciplines that you can do, has a description of each of them kind of thing. And one of them is celebration, which I thought was really interesting because how often do we see like celebrating someone or something as like a spiritual discipline, right? When that comes to birthdays, or when it comes to other not necessarily Christian events like Valentine's Day, right? Like we can still I can still, if I'm taking my fiance out to supper to celebrate her, because I want to do something nice for her, that's not a bad thing. Should I do that more than just on Valentine's Day? Yes, absolutely. I should do that more than just Valentine's Day. But it's not a horrible thing to participate in things like that. It kind of reminds me of there's a passage in Exodus, I believe, that's talking about, it's right after the Israelites get captured by the Babylonians, and uh, yeah, God tells them that they should plant gardens and
Yeah.
They should participate in what's going on in the city, beautify the city, kind of thing. And yeah, I think when it comes to celebrating these Christian, or sorry, not things, holidays that aren't necessarily like Christian holidays, like Christmas and Easter, like Valentine's Day or something like that. Yes, we need to keep in mind we don't want to make idols out of these things, but also there is merit in just participating in culture in a way that is making the world beautiful, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Um,
Mhm. Mhm.
yeah, that's controversial, I guess, but I think that is I think that is a very like biblical precedent that God wants us to participate in the world that He loves.
No, no,
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. That's a side tangent, but that's a fact. One of my favorite verses in the whole Bible is that passage from Exodus
yeah,
that
I
you
should
just
find that
referenced.
passage.
Incredible, incredible, incredibly powerful, moving, inspirational, missional passage that all of us should read, especially the folks who are kind of getting sick and tired of the sin in the world and just frustrated by that should read that passage, meditate on it. But what you said about, yeah, like being in impacting the culture in a positive way. And case in point, Valentine's Day. I picked up a little bit from when my brothers were arguing about the merits of celebrating holidays or not. Saint Valentine, his whole thing, because what was happening in the culture at the time was um there was sort of a, you might call it like a sexual revolution, and people were people were, you know, exploring their sexual proclivities. Okay, so they were, you know, being very promiscuous and just kind of doing what their hearts wanted. And Saint Valentine's thing was, he was really pushing for, he was responding to what was happening there, and he was trying to bring back sort of a biblical moral um uh voice into what was happening there. So he really pushed for, you know, sex within marriage is the only context in which people should be having sexual relations, is it within marriage. He really pushed for that, and the holiday came out of that, from sort of a, out of
Kind of a push
promiscuous
for
sort of culture. He was trying to, let's go back to the Bible, and let's go back to um what is moral and what is right. And that's where that's where Valentine's Day comes from.
right. It's kind of
So
a remembrance of Saint
it's
Valentine.
kind of that is what like that holiday that we're now contending, maybe this isn't something that should be celebrated. The origins of that are this man who looked around at what was happening and said, this is wrong, and we should go back to the Bible and what God preaches. Um, what the Bible teaches, I should say. Um, so, and that's, we have the ability to also do that, where, yeah, you can participate. We get to participate in these societal, cultural holidays, events, but we get to choose how we participate. So, you know, that might mean, we don't, on Halloween, for example, we don't have to light candles and do seances, but we can participate in a way that is in line with our beliefs.
Yeah, and loving to
So
our neighbor.
even, and loving to your neighbors. So I know a lot of people who they will sit down and they will just pray on Halloween night, because yeah, there's probably a lot of crazy stuff happening there. And so they're not participating in the spirit of that, but they're also not, we can't even we can't even go outside on Halloween night. You know, this is something like you say that you're staying within the culture. You're not isolating yourself. You're not removing yourself from the picture, but you are involved in a way that is bringing out some good
Yeah. Yeah. Like
at the end of the day.
I'm not a huge proponent for Halloween, but like Halloween is the only day of the year where all of your neighbors are going to knock on your door and
Yeah,
ask you to give them something. Right. And
yeah,
it's like, what an opportunity you have to love your neighbor on those days, literally.
uh,
Right. Like,
yeah,
um, yeah, something that the church that I worked at would do is we would plan an event where we would just hand out candy from the church and just have a bunch of people there running different activities and stuff like that. They still do it. And it's a really great time to connect with the community around the church. Um, yeah, all this to say, like, you know, it's also reminding me of another kind of biblical principle. It's kind of what Paul talks about in like Romans 14 or 1 Corinthians 8, where it's like he's talking about Christians not eating meat that has been sacrificed to idols. Um, and his point in saying that is that, uh, like he says that there are those who he calls weaker Christians who should, they believe that you shouldn't eat meat sacrificed to idols. And Paul is just saying like it's actually okay for you to do that, but you should not do that if it's going to be a stumbling block for your fellow Christian,
yeah.
right? And yeah, it's something that we need to be sensitive to as well. Like for these things, they can very easily be a big stumbling block for other believers. Um, and I wouldn't want like my opinion on Halloween or Valentine's Day to be a big stumbling block for other believers, but I would want them to know that you are able to participate in these things without it being total pagan idolatry. Um, yeah, yeah, but I understand if like you're in a place where you just don't want to participate in those things, and that's also totally fine. You don't need to participate in those Valentine's Day and Halloween, or even things like Lent or like Holy Week. Those things have been put in place to help you to celebrate Easter, like Lent and Holy Week, in a very full way. But you don't need to celebrate or observe those special days if you really don't want to. It's
Uh-huh,
not a
uh-huh,
it's not a requirement of you.
uh-huh,
But
uh-huh.
yeah, yeah,
Paul literally, I mean, it's like he he addresses this very, very literally in Romans from the approximately 15 seconds of research I did prior to hitting record on this. But he says in Romans chapter 14, verses 5 through 6, he says, one person considers one day more sacred than another. Another considers every day alike. Each of them should be fully convinced in their own mind. Whoever regards one day as special does so to the Lord. Whoever eats meat does so to the Lord, for they give thanks to God. Whoever abstains does so to the Lord and gives thanks to God.
yeah. It's right there. Very, very, very gray area. Hey, Paul just leaves us in a very gray.
Yeah, yeah. He really leaves it to your discretion, which is
Yeah, and kind of like
um
a Holy Spirit Christian conscience type of
mhm.
thing. Yeah,
Yeah, which like you say is
discernment.
like there's no there is no science to that. Like I think but that leads to another really interesting question, which is why and how the Holy Spirit convicts people in the way that it does. Like Paul is saying that if the Spirit is convicting you not to celebrate the holiday, not whatever it might be,
Right. Yeah.
you ought to listen to that.
Yeah. Listen to that conviction.
And conversely, if you are not convicted, in fact, you are convicted in the opposite direction of, yes, absolutely, let's have the family over and celebrate Christmas, then you ought to follow that. So that's really interesting why the Spirit convicts when and how he does. But he does kind of leave it to our discretion, which I think that's a lot. That is an area where a lot of people are very uncomfortable. I think that a lot of people want to just be told what is right, what is wrong. And here he's saying, freedom, you have freedom.
The freedom of the Christian.
At the prompting of the Spirit. But
yeah,
the freedom of the Christian.
And that too, of course.
Yeah. Tag it on the end there. Anyway, so with that in mind, I will be trick-or-treating on Halloween. I think that just about does it for that little chat. What do you think? What do you think, Nathan?
Yeah, I guess like for those listening, going into Holy Week I guess that's going to be next week, hey? Is that next week? I think it is.
That is next week.
Yeah, wow. So by the time you're listening to this on Friday, so yeah, next week, from the time you're listening to this, will be Holy Week. Yeah, I would encourage you just to participate in some of the different days. Find a Lutheran congregation or even like an Anglican congregation and go and just participate in the different services that they have throughout the week. And love to hear your feedback. Let us know in the comments section what you think about these things, what you think about these conversation topics. Even if your opinion is very controversial, feel free to put it in there. Maybe we will respond. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what kind of time we have to respond to comments. But yeah, thank you everyone for tuning in to this episode of Theology on the Rise. And we will see you in the next one. Take care, guys.
Bye, guys.
Hey, guys. Thanks for watching this episode of Theology on the Rise. Please leave a like, subscribe to the channel. It's a great way to support us. Leave a comment down below. I just wanted to give a quick shout out to the CALC, the Canadian Association of Lutheran Churches, for sponsoring this episode. If you'd like to know more about the CALC, you can go to their website, calc.ca, to find out more about the Association of Lutheran Churches in Canada and to find a church close to you. Thanks, guys. We'll see you in the next one.